We're going to get started here. Welcome to City Hall Council Chambers for today's council meeting, October the 18th, 2016. We'll start by acknowledging we're on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and thankful for that. And Madam Clerk, I'll ask for the roll call, please.
Mayor Robertson's in the chair. Councillor Louis has a leave of absence for civic business. Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Deal, Councillor Jang, Councillor Reimer, Councillor Meggs, Councillor Ball has a leave of absence, civic business. Councillor Carr, Councillor Affleck has a leave of absence for personal reasons, and Councillor DeGenova. Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thanks, Madam Clerk, and welcome again, everyone. So, Council is required to meet later this week in camera, and the reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the agenda. Can I have someone move that motion? Councillor Deal, seconder. Councillor Carr. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. So we will meet at the lunch break, as is typical for us, and we're into the minutes from our past set of meetings. Minutes 1 are from the regular council meeting October the 4th. Any corrections to those minutes? Moved by Councillor Deal, seconded by Councillor Carr. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Minutes 2 are from the business license hearing October the 4th, 2016. Any corrections? Councillor Jang moves, Councillor Deal seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Those are adopted. Minutes 3 are from the regular council meeting that followed the Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priorities, and that was October the 5th. Councillor Jang will move adoption. Councillor Deal will second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. So we've adopted all of our minutes from early October, and we're on to our consent agenda items. We've got 1 communication, 3 administrative reports, and 3 policy reports on the agenda for consideration. Council may adopt the recommendations on these items collectively in a single motion. Does any member wish to hold any of the items for debate or questions to staff? Councillor Carr.
Yes, could you hold policy reports 1 and 2, please?
Policy reports 1 and 2, and Councillor DeGenova.
Communications number 1.
Okay. And we will, with that, then I'll ask if any member wishes to hold any of the, or declare a conflict of interest in any of the other items that have that item vote them separately on. We're doing that separately now. Okay, no conflicts. So we need someone to move adoption of the recommendations before council in contained in the reports, with the exception of communication 1, policy report 1, and policy report 2, which are being held for debate and questions to staff. Separate vote. Councillor Deal will move the consent agenda. Councillor Jang will second that. Any debate on all those recommendations in the reports? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. So we have adopted the following reports and their recommendations. Administrative Report 1 is the closure and sale of a portion of road adjacent to 5045 Boundary Road. Next is Management Agreement for Rhoda House. That's 1415 Barclay Street. And 3 is Vancouver Community Sport Hosting Grants, 2016 Fall Intake. Policy Report 3 is CD1 rezoning 7638 to 7664 Cambie Street. Those are all approved, and we are on to the next. We'll bring these others back later in the meeting. We're on to our report references, and our first report reference is the Vancouver Airport Authority's annual presentation. We have Craig Richmond here as the President and CEO of YVR, and Tamara Vrooman, who's the Board of Directors and appointed by City Council here, and they are here to present. I'll ask Mr. Richmond and Ms. Vrooman to step right up. Welcome back to Council.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning with yourself and Council. My name is Tamara Vrooman. I'm the President and CEO of Van City Credit Union and also the City of Vancouver's nominee to the Board of Directors for the Vancouver Airport Authority, affectionately known as YVR. Craig is going to take you through some of the significant activities and achievements of the Airport Authority over the last year and also point to the future. Some of the things I'm particularly proud of and take note of is not only the work that the airport has been doing to welcome more flights in very colorful fashion, Craig will talk about that, from various points, particularly in Asia and China, but also the work that they have been doing on sustainability, diversity with respect to employment and inclusiveness. So with that, I'll turn it over to Craig, CEO of the airport.
Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Richmond.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, Council. Thanks for having me here today. Very pleased to have this opportunity to provide you with an annual update from the Vancouver Airport Authority. As you know, we're a community-based, not-for-profit organization. Our mission is to connect BC proudly to the world. We believe it's important to have a positive working relationship with you, our neighbor, and one of our nominating entities. I'll start by sharing an overview of the past year and move to a progress update on our master plan and environmental management plan. Both of which I think will be interesting given the common focus we share in growing sustainably. As you know, Vancouver Airport Authority receives no government funding and reinvests all profits back into the airport to maintain the highest level of safety and efficiency. We certainly don't get a free ride. We do pay rent to the federal government while improving the airport and expanding our business. And business has been great. In 2015, YVR welcomed 20.3 million passengers, a jump of almost 5% from 2014. It's the third year in a row we've increased by about 1 million passengers, and we expect to do the same in 2016. In fact, we're currently forecasting to exceed 21.5 million passengers by year end, and perhaps even more than that. We're Canada's second busiest airport, and we now see up to 75,000 people travel through YVR on peak days. Our big goal is 25 million passengers by 2020, a strategic goal we have. We're on our way to that, but why is that important? It's important because these passengers would result in 5,000 to 7,000 new jobs in BC and up to $500 million in additional GDP to the BC economy. And I can tell you, I've never been more popular with the tourism and hotel associations in BC this summer, given our growth. BC airports would benefit from increased flights, communities would benefit from tourism, export opportunities, and other spin-off effects. In order to grow, we need to attract airlines and support growth for our existing partners. A current example of the type of growth we're looking for is from Air Canada, who alone has introduced 5 new destinations this year, which includes the new direct service to Delhi that starts on Thursday, not to mention new flights to Brisbane, San Jose, San Diego, and Chicago. Air Canada is investing in building out YVR as North America's trans-Pacific hub, and we support this effort because it's good for the whole province. In 2014, we developed a new strategic plan that positions YVR for growth, includes 4 key objectives shown here. And we really take each one of those very seriously. And to spur this growth, we're working hard to encourage airlines to do business here. In 2016, we launched a new rates and charges program for airlines called Connect YVR, which dropped average rates by 15% on the 1st of January. We now understand our rates are the lowest in Canada and amongst our competitors in the US. This fair and equitable program offers a rate structure for landing and terminal fees, which is designed to incent airlines for growth and for efficiency and therefore sustainability. We also have the lowest airport improvement fee of any major airport in Canada. Speaking of the airlines, here's a quick list of the new services we have announced and welcomed over the last year, in addition to the significant growth we've seen from Air Canada. Our new partner, Aeromexico, daily to Mexico City as of December 2015, and going to 10 times a week on December 1st. Orlando by WestJet starting on January 1st, and also WestJet added nonstop service to Gatwick, which went very well. It's its first international destination out of YVR. Air Transat to Rome, first for YVR. Our new partner, Xiamen Airlines, direct to Xiamen. Sichuan Air with a new direct, Sichuan Air with a direct stop to Zhengzhou. And finally, Beijing Capital Airlines will start flying December 30th, giving us 2 more mainland Chinese airline carriers to cities I will not pronounce. And it's more than any other airport in North America. To further improve our connections, we're pushing to expand visa-free initiatives such as Transit Without Visa and the China Transit Program. And these programs allow international travelers to connect through YVR without the need for a Canadian visa. We're very focused on delivering remarkable customer experiences. Our most important asset is the YVR community, a collection of 24,000 people who work hard every day to deliver a safe and efficient airport. In fact, almost 27%, or over 6,400 of these employees, live right here in Vancouver. In 2015, the team received a 91% customer satisfaction rating for the 3rd year in a row. We also received the Skytrax Award for the best airport in North America for an unprecedented 7 consecutive years. We receive awards like this because we're constantly improving the terminal for every customer, but it's not about the terminal, it's really about how every person in the terminal reacts to our passengers. We believe that every person should have the opportunity to fly regardless of their abilities, and it's our job to make sure their needs are met. For instance, we recently developed a multi-year accessibility plan and completed a thorough terminal-wide audit of our facilities and services, and we're implementing changes over the next few years, working with various communities. For example, we recently introduced a sign language video that welcomes passengers on arrival into the customs hall, and you can see it in the corner of the big board there on the right. We also opened a dog relief area in U.S. departures. Another passenger innovation is Border Express. Created and manufactured locally, Border Express is now available at 32 locations in Canada, the U.S., and the Caribbean. We've sold over 1,000 of these kiosks, which reduce wait times for everyone at customs by automating part of the immigration process. In 2015, we received the Airport Innovation of the Year Award for the world from Aviation Authority CAPA. This speaks to one of our cultural norms, which is innovation. It's one of our key competitive strengths. This slide, which literally was just shown to the board about a week ago, shows where we are on a sustainability continuum. On the left, you'll see market-driven, and then you'll see people that are focused on it, and then people that are shaping the future. Clearly, the city of Vancouver is out there to the right, and we are just now behind you. In about 3 years, we've come from the middle of the pack up to one of the leading airports. Not the leading airport, we're still trailing Copenhagen, Airport de Paris, I should say, and Schiphol, but we are definitely going to be continuing, and I think it's a race worth continuing, and if we're always just slightly lagging, that's not a bad thing as you improve as well. When we talk about sustainability, we are referring to the areas of economic, social, environmental, and governance. We benchmarked ourselves against other airports and organizations, and we're pretty pleased with our progress. Under an environmental management plan, we have 4 big targets for 2020. These targets are actually very similar to the city's plan. It includes reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 33%, reducing waste by 50%, reducing potable water consumption by 30%, and improving overall ecosystem health. 2015 was the first year that we measured ourselves against these targets, and the results are promising. For instance, we have a 51% waste diversion rate so far this year. And recently, we became the first airport in the world to receive Salmon Safe certification. We were also recognized for our efforts in becoming a sustainable airport after being awarded Level 2 Airport Carbon Accreditation by Airport Council International. It's proof of our commitment to reduce greenhouse gases. One way we're thinking of doing this is by development of a geothermal district energy system that would provide heating and cooling for the terminal building. Planning is well underway, and we'll be bringing it to our board in December. Our efforts to reduce our carbon footprint and be a sustainable airport are working, and we're making great progress towards our 2020 goals. As a sustainable gateway, YVR provides economic and social benefits to the communities we serve. This year, we'll invest $1 million in local not-for-profit organizations, charities, and sponsorships. We led a diverse range of community engagement programs. We're thrilled to partner with organizations like Vancouver Pride, Celebration of Light, and British Columbia Mobility Opportunity Society. Our board has also recently started discussions on a living wage at the airport. It's very complex for us, but we are continuing to look at it. Being a leader in sustainability is also about governance and how we manage our airport. Let me talk for a moment about governance. It's going to become more and more in the news. The Airport Authority is governed by a non-political board of directors appointed from key governments and organizations responsible to the local community. In YVR's case, this includes the Government of Canada, the cities of Richmond and Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, and the professional organizations representing law, accounting, and engineering. We also have a few members at large. The unique makeup of the Airport Authority Board ensures that decisions about the future of the airport reflect the values and direction of the communities we serve. For almost 25 years, airports across Canada have been governed by local authorities like ours, and the result for YVR and many others has been very positive. We believe the current not-for-profit model helps ensure that we, the airport, are accountable to you, our community members, by delivering an economic engine and jobs creator that the province can be proud of. I think Canada has an exceptional airport model, and also the World Economic Forum has agreed, said one of the best infrastructures in the world. In February, the Minister of Transport released a report reviewing the Canada Transportation Act. It was commissioned by the previous Conservative government and was led by David Emerson. There are many aspects of the review which we support, include improving the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority, or the people who screen you at the airport, liberalizing air bilaterals and offering arrivals duty-free. However, there's one recommendation we don't agree with. Recommendation 3B says the Government of Canada should strengthen the viability, accountability, and competitiveness by moving to a share capital structure for the larger airports. We just don't agree. Selling Canada's airports is not in the best interest of Canadians, especially Canadian air travelers, because it will lead to higher costs, lower service levels, less capital investment, and a loss of community control. And I can share more information with you on that and leave that with the Council. One of the ways we ensure we operate in the best interest of Canadians is through collaboration with our community. Last month, we began our second phase of consultation for YVR 2037, our 20-year master plan for the airport. This phase of consultation focuses on 6 specific areas: land use, airside and airspace, ground access, environment, community amenities, and the terminal. We also want to inspire people's imagination to help us create the airport of the future. To ensure we get key input from our community and stakeholders, we've created a number of ways people can participate, including facilitated public workshops, open houses, stakeholder meetings, and an online platform for feedback. Our master plan team met with the City of Vancouver staff, and we understand and recognize both the challenge and importance of balancing growth with environmental priorities in relation to Vancouver's Greenest City Action Plan. We extended invitations to Mayor and Council as well as Mr. Sadhu Johnson to our regional government meeting, but would welcome others who are interested in participating in the workshop on October 21st. Our online platform for participation will also remain open for a few more weeks. I have to say, having been to 4 of the public master plan meetings, they've been very positive, very interesting, and we've literally got hundreds of recommendations for amenities and terminal design. So that's our story for 2015, from growing our business to reaching our environmental goals and operating a safe and reliable airport. We look forward to your participation in our master plan engagement. Are there other events that you think we should support and attend? Are there other opportunities to work together towards our shared goal of sustainable growth? For more information on our activities in 2015, I'd like to invite you to check out our new 2015 Sustainability Report, which I will provide to Council. And I'd like to echo Tamara's thoughts. If you'd ever liked a tour or you'd like a deeper dive into some of the things we're doing at the airport, we'd be happy to host you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richmond, for the presentation, and a big thanks to Mayor Vrooman for being a board director on behalf of the city. We appreciate all your time and energy into that accountability piece. So thanks for that. I've got Councillor Meggs first up with questions.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Richmond and Ms. Vrooman, for all this work. I mean, there's no doubt that YVR is a critical part of the entire provincial economy, never mind playing a national role. But I am interested and concerned, I think, as you are, about the recommendations of the Emerson report. And I wonder if you could go a little bit deeper and give Council an explanation of why you feel that costs would rise. Normally, people assert that privatization will drive down costs, but in this case, we would see a purchase by a private company of the entire airport, and then they would presumably include those purchase costs in their overhead. Can you just walk through that model?
Well, the first thing is, and this is not just a semantic point, we are actually privatized. So we've gained all those efficiencies that you would get from being private. If you were to say, well, what's the reason you'd go from government to private? We're innovative, we're focused, we're very efficient. UBC's Air Transport Research Society has named us the most efficient airport in Canada, I think the 4th most efficient in North America, so it's not like there's a lot of costs to come out. So we run it very much like a private business. So if somebody were to come in and buy it, and that would probably occur through renationalization of the airports, they would be expropriated by the government so then they could sell them. It would go at very many multiples of $1 billion. I mean, it's hard to know exactly, but having been out in that world, in the private airport world, it could easily go for 4 or 5, even more $1 billion. Well, to pay that back, that's hundreds of millions of dollars a year that comes out of the airport to pay the new shareholders and the debt holders. And to, as an example, at about a $5 billion price, it's $250 million a year. That's my current operating budget and capital budget. So that money's got to come from somewhere.
Presumably, a first place to look would be the airport improvement fee, which is now the lowest in Canada.
Probably every fee would go up. Now, the government would know that, so they would have to develop quite a significant regulatory structure. And basically what the airport would become is a regulated utility. And you could look online at Heathrow, how every year they argue with the government and the airlines about how much to increase the fees. all fees.
The
So
purpose of regulating a utility that's privatized is to ensure there's an appropriate return on investment. In your case, you're nonprofit, so that's not part of the discussion.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so
Every
you pay
dollar we
rent
make.
and plow back in what you require for reinvestment.
So, you know, those 1,000 kiosks, we've made some really good money off those kiosks. All that money goes back to running the airport. That would not be the case under a share capital structure.
So the report was commissioned by, Mr. Emerson, I think, was the first CEO. He was one of your predecessors at YVR.
The old boss.
And he started this report some years ago and has delivered it to the current government. Is your sense that it's under active consideration to pursue this approach?
Yes, I think the new term in vogue in Ottawa now is asset recycling. And so the idea of somehow capitalizing an infrastructure bank by selling off the airports has real appeal because there would be, you know, a large check attached. We think that, look, Canadians, British Columbians have already paid for the airport, $3.1 billion worth of infrastructure. And if it's, you know, nationalized and sold off to a consortium of pension funds and investment banks, you'll end up paying for it again.
Yeah, it's not clear either, and perhaps you can help me on this. I mean, we have a system of airports in BC, and yours is the sort of the jewel in the crown, but there are many more regional airports and so forth, and there's recommendations involving them. It's not clear to me, and I wondered if you think it's clear that the money that would be generated by this would actually go back into airport infrastructure. It would go into the government's pocket to be used as they saw fit, presumably.
That's right. I mean, as another reason why we're not in favor, as a government policy, you'd basically be taking what air travelers built and then putting into all other modes of infrastructure, and we don't think that's good government policy either. There was, to your other point, there was some talk about privatizing or share capitalizing smaller airports, but there's no money to be made in that, so it was thrown out. But I'd like to say that we are really keen supporters of our regional airports in BC. We send out executives and directors, management to talk to all the airports in BC because they feed us. And, you know, we don't want them to think we're Vancouver-centric. We very much believe in getting somebody from Prince George to Shanghai just as easily and quickly as somebody from Shanghai to Dallas. So we're out there talking and working with them, and we've advocated that of the $300 million in rent the major airports are giving back to Ottawa, that a larger portion of that be sent as grants to smaller airports that have a harder time raising money.
Well, I was in Haida Gwaii this summer, and air travel is almost more critical to Haida Gwaii than it is to YVR. In certain ways, it's actually more essential and not profitable. So that's all my questions, Mr. Mayor. But if it's in order at the end of this presentation, I wouldn't mind moving a motion to endorse YVR's concerns in this regard and have you write to Ottawa to that effect.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Meggs. Come back to you after on that. Councillor Carr is next.
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much, Mr. Richmond, Ms. Ruman, for being here and for the work that you're doing. So my first question is, I was really taken by the movement forward on the sustainability issue and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So Paris is ahead of us. What is Paris doing differently than YVR that we could learn from?
Well, there's a wide panoply of areas because it's not just environmental, you know, it's everything. There are areas, for example, that we have to look at, as you'll appreciate. The next level is all of our contractors, everybody on the island. We're pretty good ourselves now, but we have to actually now get everybody on board in all aspects of sustainability, governance, social, you know, all of that. So they are a little bit ahead. In our defense, I would say the laws in the EU have forced them that way. So good to have somebody to chase after. But you know, we've gone from, in just 3 years, from 60% leadership to 80%, which is significant. And now we have to say, okay, now how do we get to 85 and 90? And we'll be putting in front of the board a lot of ideas in that area.
When you talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 33%, over what, 2007 level?
2012 levels.
2012. Is it for your operations, or does that also include the airlines?
No, to be clear, yeah, it's about us. What is
Right.
as the airport authority, one of our biggest single issues is heating and cooling what is effectively the biggest building in BC. So that's why we think district energy, geothermal is the right way to go. But we've done things with our partners, such as incenting people on the ramp to electrify all of the vehicles, all of the tugs and the carts. We're putting in the electrical equipment, and they can get a 10% rebate on their concession fee if they do that. Also, if they follow the safety rules and deliver the bags quickly. So we're using incentives to try and get people to get on board.
That's a great suggestion. I was also taken by the fact when I read the little synopsis we got in our council binders, 23,000 employees. You're committed around sustainability. That includes social sustainability. And you mentioned living wage. When we had the discussion at council, we had people come to speak to us about living wage, and they brought employees, people who were traveling from point A to point B, and one of them was an airport worker, and I was really struck by her story about how difficult it is for her to get to her start of shift time in early morning. There's no transit. She has to drive. Parking is expensive. Are you looking at an issue like that?
Well, we're always looking. We try to keep the price to all the employees for parking low. You'll appreciate parking is a finite resource on the island, and we would prefer actually people to take mass transit. Just as a side issue, 25% of the people who work at the airport now take either the Canada Line or a bus. That's the highest number of mass transit to an airport in North America. So it's good. We need it to get better to 30 or 35%, and we need to expand the hours of operation. Of course, we have to work with TransLink on that.
We'll work with you on that.
Well, I think we're becoming even more and more a 24-hour airport, and the shifts don't all start at 6 in the morning now. Sometimes they start at 4. So we have to look after that. We're examining all of those ways we could make it easier to work at the airport.
Okay, one final question. Waste diversion, again in the report, significant. It was 46% was on here. You just said 51%. So you're climbing by the day. Tell me what the biggest challenges are remaining. I'm assuming you did low-hanging fruit. So now what are the big challenges in waste diversion?
That's a great question. We actually divert in the high 90s any of the construction debris on the air side, so concrete, steel, 97%. Where we have sort of topped out is, I think a lot of people have found, in our food courts. So this next year, we're actually assigning somebody to be there to separate the food, when you come up, because people have to know what to do, and frankly, sometimes they're confused. Where does this go? Where does the plate go? So we're actually going to have a big central area with a person there. It's expensive, but they're now going to do the waste diversion. We think we'll get another 25% of the food diversion doing that.
Wow, great. Paper cups, throw away.
We'd like to move to corn-based plastic cups that are totally renewable. So.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Carr. Councillor Jang.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I understand that YVR has now the most Chinese airlines flying in out, like 5 or 6 or something like that. Six. And I know that the Chinese Consul General was bragging about it at the recent UBCM conference.
I'm glad to hear that.
Very pleased. They were very pleased. So China have we maxed out there? Or are there other areas of the world where the bread and butter airlines come into Vancouver? Do you see growth?
Well, just first of all, two questions. Nobody's maxed out on China. That is such a focus for us because just the growth in middle-class air travel out of China, Canada couldn't take more than 2 or 3%. We'd fill every airport. So we need to work on making that still as attractive as possible. And there will be a couple of announcements next year, I think, on other airlines and other destinations. Having said that, remarkable that every one of our sectors is busy. Domestic travel, which largely in the summer is people visiting family and friends and vacationing, very busy, up 8%. European travel, still hugely successful. Every day in the summer, 1,600 seats to London alone. on 5 different airplanes and full all summer. So yeah, there isn't a single sector I could say that is, that is not performing really, really well. And we're very open. I mean, although we talk a lot about China, we're very keen on South America. We're very keen on Mexico, and we're still missing that elusive route to the Middle East, whether it's through Turkey or through the United Arab Emirates. That is a definite hole in our portfolio. And about 80,000 people a year travel from Vancouver to go down to Seattle to catch Emirates. So we're still looking how to fill that gap.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Stevenson is next.
Thanks. Just to follow up on that, I think that South America isn't serviced as well as it might be. You have to do a lot of connecting to get there. Why is that?
We don't have any bilaterals. The federal government basically mandates the trade bilaterals, and we don't have the bilaterals that would allow us to do that right now. Also, what we need to get something like transit without visa, so you could fly from Santiago to Vancouver and then on to Narita or on to Taiwan or Beijing without having to have a Canadian visa. And so far they've been reluctant to do that. We're working on that. We're hopeful we get a pilot program on that next year.
Because you can go out of Toronto easily.
Yes. Yeah.
Seems a big hole to me then.
It is, and in fact, it's just back to the future. Canadian Airlines used to be able to fly from Lima through Vancouver and then on to Japan. So it's going back 25 years. But we think that, yes, some of the nations in South America are going through upheaval, but they will be massive trading partners in the future, and we are the fastest way there from Asia.
Just to follow up on Councillor Meg's, just for my own clarity, regarding the privatization. Why do you think that this report, in fact, is recommending this? What's the rationale for?
Caught us by surprise. If you read the report, it's really, the recommendation does not fall out of the narrative. The narrative says, oh, the airports are great, and says you should sell them. So it caught us by surprise. We don't need private equity. In fact, I have to push banks away. We have a AA credit rating. We borrow at a very effective rate. Not quite as good as the city, but for an airport, amongst the best there is. So, we're not sure where it came from in that report. Where it's been latched onto now by the federal government is, okay, this is a way to capitalize the infrastructure bank.
Just a brief moment of compliments. I think that our airport is fantastic. I mean, those of us who've traveled a bit, you take it for granted until you go to some other airport and realize what a huge difference. I personally went into the airline business in 1966. For 10 years I joined Air Canada, and I used to work out of the old airport before. So I've seen huge changes from those days, and what an amazing airport we have now that I think has become known throughout the world, particularly as well with the Aboriginal art and so on that there is. So good work.
Thank you very much.
So I've got a couple questions, and then I'll go back to Councillor Meggs. First, well, I'll echo the concerns of others expressed about this Emerson report's recommendation around privatizing and the implications of that for people in Vancouver and Canada even more generally. So I look forward to Councillor Meggs' next steps on that. A question on the development, and just something we haven't touched on yet, related to the Canada Line station stops, the development, the shopping mall development that's happened there. How is that all panning out, and where is it all going from here in terms of next steps, development on Sea Island?
Well, thank you for that. So the MacArthur Glen Designer Outlet Center opened in July of 14. And it's been very successful, very, very positive results, especially with travelers. They can come out from the terminal in a matter of minutes, or they can arrive by bus. It's a way for us to use some land that really wasn't all that accessible for anything aviation related because it's too close to the runway. In fact, I've been asked, why is the parking where it is? Well, because that's the lowest thing that that we're allowed to do in that area. South of that, we are just now thinking about what could we do in this very nice parcel of land with a Canada Line station attached that is airport related, that is sustainable, that is something that, not a shopping mall, something else, something that's, LEED Platinum and on the district energy, and perhaps a high-tech hub of some kind. There are some great companies out there, Amazon, Alibaba, looking for space. So we're just starting to talk about that now and talking about that with our master plan. As soon as we get the master plan approved, we'll start thinking about how to develop it.
Okay. And a question on the jet fuel pipeline and status of that, and where you're at with Richmond City Council, who I know expressed real concerns about it.
Yes, it's right now it's going through its last environmental reviews. I think they'll start construction soon. We've encouraged and worked with both parties to come together, and I think it's a better relationship. I don't think it'll ever be tremendously friendly, but I think there's a better relationship now. And to be fair, a lot of that was a change out in management at the top of the fuel consortium. I think that what we need to do now is to get a constant oversight, sort of like we have an environmental management oversight that that city is part of, or our noise management plan. You have 3 members. I think there needs to be a citizen oversight committee to make sure that, I think there's over 60 recommendations they have to follow to make sure it's safe. And I think it's going to happen. We need the fuel. Now just have to make sure it's done as safely as possible.
Okay. Question, a bigger picture, and this is on sustainability around jet fuel and all the innovation that's happening right now around the world to reduce the climate impacts of air travel. And I'm curious what the current role is of YVR and other airports. What as a stakeholder in that? We've seen with the port, the West Coast ports being able to collaborate and say no more dirty ships that are burning below a certain grade of fuel. I'm curious if airports have a comparable kind of power where they can start to ratchet up the requirements on airlines?
It's a good question. In general, we've been following, and Canada follows what's going on with ICAO, because aviation is so related across the world. We just signed on to the Paris Accords just within the last 2 weeks, the aviation industry. I think that's very positive. As far as the fuel goes, we actually had hoped to be a trial site for biofuel with Air Canada. They eventually went to Montreal just because that's their maintenance base. But we're very keen to partner with somebody to get into some biofuels. I think the biggest improvement, we see this in our noise and in the emissions, has been the government mandated 20 years ago the movement to stage 3 and stage 4 aircraft. And if I can just give you a figure to show you how efficient the modern aircraft are, 787, the Dreamliner that is now being flown by Air Canada and Japan Airlines, China Southern, it's going to be probably the most popular airliner in Vancouver. Per 100 passenger kilometers, it burns the same fuel as a Ford Focus. So that's why everybody wants this airplane, because it just sips fuel, but it also, with that reduction in fuel burn, there's a huge reduction in emissions. So the industry is aware that if it continues to grow, as it grows, it can continue to grow the emissions. So there's a lot of work in that area.
Okay, that's good to hear. But that's industry. It's airline
and airports
led, and the aviation industry has collectively signed on to the Paris Climate Accord.
With a special aviation focus, but I can send you some information on that.
Okay, yeah, it'd be helpful to. I've been reading some of it, but wasn't sure if the airports have played any role or have a role to play going forward in terms of oversight.
We have a role. The single biggest source of greenhouse gases is the jet engines on the aircraft. Mm-hmm. But as an airport, we are committed to reducing our footprint down to 0. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your update on the sustainability front and all the great work that you're doing on that. It's good. It's a good alignment with our goal to be the greenest city in the world. And as we have many different facets of this city out there in the world representing that drive to be the greenest, I think it strengthens our case and attracts more people to come, whether they're tourists or live or invest here, it's a benefit to us. So appreciate your efforts on that front. And beyond that, I hear nothing but good things and praise for the work YVR is doing and the passenger customer experience. And appreciate the corporate social responsibility approach that you've taken in leaders on that front. So appreciate all this good work.
Thank you.
And sounds like we have some work to do. Councillor Meggs, you wanted to come back on?
That right to Federal Minister of Transport endorsing the position of the Vancouver Airport Authority Board, rejecting the proposal of the Canadian Transportation Act review chaired by David Emerson to move within 3 years to a share capital structure for larger airports. So I tried to isolate that point. I'll just say briefly, Mr. Mayor, that notwithstanding the fact that the YVR board is a private entity, it's on public land and it comes and meets with us once a year, which would not happen if it was in the hands of bondholders in Geneva. What we would find out instead is that our fees have gone up and that I think that we'd see very quickly that YVR would start to slide to the bottom of that scale when it comes to sustainability as those shareholders look to drive up their rates of return. So, you know, I know that I don't need to belabor the point, but the airport authority is responsive to public concerns as well as being very efficient economically. So we don't want to take any chances with that, and I hope Council agrees with this.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Meggs. Councillor Deal will second that. Anyone wish to speak to that motion arising from this YVR presentation? Happy to put that together. Appreciate the initiative, Councillor Meggs, and may need to follow up with you, Mr. Richmond, and Ms. Ruman, if there's any detail to fill in the gap that's consistent with this motion in terms of a letter to the minister. So with that, let's go to the voting queue. If there are no speakers. Okay, we have 8 votes in favor. We're not quite done? I'm seeing 8 out of 8. Okay, unanimous support for the motion to put that letter together. So we'll do that as a next step. And once again, big thanks to you two for both being here to report back on the state of the airport. And we appreciate all your work representing the city more broadly.
Thank you very much.
The world. Thanks very much. And we'll follow up on the letter front as needed. Thank you. Okay, so we are on to our second report reference, which is on arts and culture grants and Vancouver Civic Theatres. And Kathleen Llewellyn-Thomas is here, our General Manager of Community Services, to start us off on the presentation, and then we will, so we'll have questions and voting on the individual, on those 4 related reports. We're starting with an overall presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. It is a pleasure to present these 4 arts and culture reports to you this morning. We've had an exciting year of significant change and accomplishment in cultural services. The reports, I'll just go through them quickly by letter. Report 2A is about our cultural infrastructure grants, and you're going to be seeing a PowerPoint presentation on that when I finish speaking to the other reports. Just want to say that we started the review in September 2016 to look at the grants to ensure that we're responding to and keeping abreast of the evolving needs of the arts and cultural community, particularly around their facilities. So the review looked at the strengths and weaknesses of the program, worked closely with stakeholders, and recommends improvements to ensure that it continues to be effective in supporting the arts. And Ms. Geisen will be presenting a PowerPoint presentation on that. Report 2B that's in front of you is about the review that we've looked at for the large-scale institutions. In 2016, we started looking at the 16 large-scale institutions to which the city grants $11.3 million every year in operating funding. We used the guidance of an operating assessment committee, and they ended up concluding, and you saw a report on this earlier in the year, that we should basically keep funding those large-scale institutions at the rate that we already are, and you already approved the lion's share of the grants. The Operating Assessment Committee, though, did identify that our cash grants didn't always correlate to the scope and scale of the organizations that we were looking at, and they made some recommendations for how we could address some of their low cash in operating grants. In that regard, they held back $110,000 of the $11 million, and this report is really reporting out that after assessing each one individually, 7 of the 16 institutions are recommended to receive an increase in their base level operating grants, and no decreases are being considered. And so it's sort of, it's like we went to a lot of work to do this review, and we ended up concluding that perhaps we're on the right track. I just want to point out that the review did point out that as we're starting to understand the extent to which the city provides support to these large-scale institutions, and it does begin to address the disparities between them, we really want to continue to look at this question, particularly in the year to come, as we do a rethink of our cultural strategy in 2017. Report 2C is about the underutilized spaces in the Vancouver Civic Theatres. In spring of 2016, Council approved a decision for the theatres to run a 1-year pilot program to subsidize the use of some of its underutilized public spaces, giving them to community groups that support arts, culture, diversity, local food, and wellness. We called them the Underutilized Civic Theatres Spaces Grants, and they were funded 100% from Vancouver Civic Theatre's own net revenues, and they were up to $100,000. The grant program was a success, and the report describes how we got greater utilization and diversity of the users on the Queen Elizabeth Theatre Plaza, in the Annex, and in the Orpheum's former Granville Street box office, where we partnered with the local BIA and had information about the community in there. And it was nice to see that old space reactivated and have public use in there. So based on the success of the program, we're requesting a 3-year annual subsidy be done in the same kind of grant program that will continue the community engagement momentum that's been built within the 2016 pilot. And all of the funding for this will be coming out of the net revenues of Vancouver Civic Theatre's budgets. And finally, Report 2D, which is in front of you, proposes an increase, you see this report annually, in the Civic Theatre's rental rates of 2% over the 2016-2017 rates, effective September 2017 to August 2018, and it will apply to all the Vancouver Civic Theatre spaces. It means an increase to the 2017-18 facility fees of 50 cents per ticket sold, with the exception of the QET Plaza and ancillary spaces, which would remain unchanged from September 17th to August 2018. So those are the 4 reports that are before you, and the Mayor's already outlined how you'll be handling them. I do want to turn the podium over to Ms. Jackie Geisen, but before I do that, Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd just like to point out that this is the last presentation that she'll be making to you, because she's moving on to another career opportunity for which we're very happy to see her. I just want to say that Jackie's been here since 2006, and in that time she developed the cultural facilities plan, which forms the basis for our investments. She initiated the thinking about arts and cultural facility planning as part of our land use planning, and she also developed the program that she's going to be presenting to you today, which is the Cultural Infrastructure Grant Program, all of course with Mayor and Council's support. So I want to thank her. She's going to be continuing her commitment to cultural spaces by going to be the very first project director at the Social Purpose Real Estate Collaborative. And I hope I haven't embarrassed her by doing this, but I just wanted to note that it's also time to say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Well, you know who I am. I'm very delighted to be here to present for you the findings and recommendations from our review on the City of Vancouver's Cultural Infrastructure Grant Program. I would like to introduce and acknowledge Deborah Bodner, who is our planner who works with me and is responsible for the program and has been instrumental in this review. All right, let's see. That's not up on this. Is that okay? So for Council and Mayor Robertson, part of the presentation is an update for you on the review, the findings, and some of the recommendations going forward. And part of it is seeking your approval for a new category in our grant program. The Critical Assistance Grant has been a long time coming. It is proposed as a category to aid with emergency situations and urgent life safety requirements. And I'm delighted to see it come forward at this time before I leave the city, and I will describe it for you further shortly. So before we get to some of the changes or the non-changes for the program, I just want to give you a little bit of an overview. The Cultural Infrastructure Grant was created in 2009 as part of a suite of recommendations that came from the Cultural Facility Plan. It has been a game changer for Vancouver nonprofit arts and culture organizations and cultural spaces in this city. It has been called the most important cultural space program the city offers by members of the arts and culture community. The program receives approximately $1.5 million annually in requests for funding for approximately $800,000 available. On an aggregate basis, close to 200 projects have been funded in 7 years, and $7 million in grant funds have been dispersed, leveraging $35 million in project activity, with a 1-to-4 leveraging ratio, which I think is pretty good for civic investment. The investments have been divided roughly into 40% for planning and 60% for minor and major capital, and the smallest grant of $1,000, the largest of $150,000. We are particularly proud of the investment in existing assets at about 65%, which reinforces the city's sustainability goals. In 2008, the Cultural Facility Plan identified the key gaps in cultural infrastructure that were existent at that time. And we have been tracking over the years how the investment through the Cultural Infrastructure Grant has endeavored to address those. I should mention that the Cultural Infrastructure Grant program responds to the needs identified by the community to improve, upgrade, repair, expand, develop, and plan for and acquire new space. A blended staff peer assessment committee reviews the applications against a set of criteria that include assessment of how it fits with the key gaps, and it is a rigorous and competitive process. So here you can see that 33% of the grants have gone to improve existing performance spaces, 24% to co-location facilities that integrate multiple functions, things like rehearsal, production, and administration, 17% to improvements in existing spaces other than performance. For the other types of cultural spaces, smaller but significant investments have been made, and the only one not to receive funding through the grant program is the 400 to 600 seat performing arts venues. And I should note that that has been addressed through some of our land use tools, for example, the York Theatre and the BMO Centre on West First. So it's not that these haven't been addressed at all, it's just that we have used different tools for that category. So what is the impact of this grant program? I won't read each of these testimonials for you. You can have a quick skim. Suffice to say, they are but a few of the emails and letters we received expressing gratitude to the city for their investment in nonprofit arts and culture space. When we peruse the list of applications and projects funded, something we make available on the city's website as it's a useful tool for others looking at what has been funded, what strikes us is not only the volume of projects and the dollars invested, but the equally significant investment in organizational capacity that occurs by nonprofits undertaking these projects. Through these investments, nonprofit groups gain knowledge, experience, and skills and become engaged in the very serious, critical situation of cultural space in Vancouver. Just as we speak of the housing situation for Vancouver, a nonprofit dispersal is also an issue, and the grant program has been essential in helping that. It takes many partners beyond the city to mitigate the impacts of the real estate market on nonprofits and artists, and the infrastructure grant has done an amazing job to help ensure that engagement is meaningful and broad. So now on to the review. After 7 years, it was time to undertake a comprehensive review of all aspects of the program, its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities for growth and/or improvement. It took place over the last 10 months with multiple consultations with the arts and culture community, from surveys, focus groups, multiple check-ins with the Arts and Culture Policy Council Spaces Subcommittee. In general, the findings showed a strong satisfaction with the program, a strong sense of the value of the funds themselves and their leveraging potential, both for leveraging additional resources and leveraging longer-term secure leases with landlords. There was also an appreciation for the evaluation process and criteria. In looking at other grant programs in North America, which we did as a scan and also a focus group with our other funders, including Ms. Ruman's Van City Foundation, Vancouver was clearly amongst the leadership programs. And in fact, it's interesting to note that Seattle just this summer created a grant program modeled on ours after numerous consults with us over the last number of years. Where there were concerns, they were focused on increasing the overall budget. No surprise. Although the program began at $1 million per year, it was reduced in 2009, and it has not seen any cost of living or inflationary increases, nor cost of construction increases. We heard comments about the challenges due to limitations on capital funding levels for minor and major capital, where obviously construction is an expensive activity, as is acquisition, and so the cap at minor capital of $35,000 and the cap at major capital of $150,000 was a barrier for some organizations. There was encouragement to emphasize investment in existing spaces and then consider investment in new strategic spaces. And there was encouragement to support innovation, out-of-the-box projects in every one of the categories of planning, minor, and major capital. I would just like to note at this time that we are doing an update to the key gaps in cultural infrastructure, as well as a check-in on the criteria for prioritizing and decision-making around cultural space investment. This is a study that is underway currently, and we will have the final results of that in 2017, and at that time they will be embedded into the grant program. So what is changing? First, no change. Responding to the consultation and the areas where the community felt the program was strong and working well, the goals, the program categories, the evaluation process, the assessment criteria, ineligible items, the intake cycle, and matching funding levels. None of these are recommended for change. I would like to note one of these, though, however, the ineligible items, which is the movable equipment. Equipment has been a long interest by staff and the community to have the opportunity to seek funds for equipment. Equipment's a tricky category because it can eat up a lot of the resources available. At this time, we are not recommending a change as the funds still remain limited, and it was felt that the increases, which I will speak about next, for minor and major capital were the most significant for hitting the crux of the situation, which still is about space for arts and culture. So what is changing? In this slide, you'll see in circle the part where we seek your approval, and then further down the last 3 bullets, some further information on recommended changes that don't require your approval. So the Critical Assistance Grant. This is a new category that is being recommended to be added starting in 2017. As you can see, it is designed to meet the needs resulting from emergency-like situations that cannot be anticipated. It is also designed to address urgently required life safety upgrades. The maximum grant would be $25,000 with an annual budget of $100,000, and that will come from the existing grant program budget. With budget and criteria pre-approved by Council, staff will be able to accept applications, complete assessments, and make recommendations for funding, subject to approval by the GM of Community Services, that enables the funds to be dispersed as needed year-round without having to return to Council for approval. And I'll come back to the criteria momentarily. So in addition, the part where we know we have a lot of excitement in the community, increasing funds for minor capital from 35 to 50,000 and increasing major capital from 150 to 250,000. We are also recommending improvements in the processing and administration of the program to make it easier on the organizations applying and implementing a capital project. These are significant changes that will enable organizations to move beyond relatively small projects to make much more significant investments in addressing their cultural space needs. And together with the critical assistance category, we expect these improvements to take the cultural infrastructure grant program and cultural space issue to the next level of game changing in Vancouver. So finally, Council, the last slide. This is the criteria that is being recommended for the critical assistance grant category, and this also requires your approval. Not dissimilar from our other grants, organizations must be Vancouver-based cultural nonprofits, registered charities, community service co-ops, or First Nations band councils, with demonstrated financial and administrative ability and the capacity to undertake the project. They must also have a minimum 10-year lease or a series of term renewals that add up to 10 years or own their own space. As stated previously, the work must relate to unforeseen facility repair, replacement, cleanup due to loss or failure of existing infrastructure or urgent life safety requirements. And it must be of such urgency that it cannot wait for future funding, and failure to remediate could lead to further system structural failure or threaten life safety. And not eligible, consistent with our other cultural infrastructure categories, projects covered by insurance, obviously where there is existing funding, regular or scheduled maintenance, operating programming or admin expenses, and the movable equipment or legal costs. And with that, Council, I'd like to thank you for your support over the years. It's been a great privilege to work on this portfolio, and we're here for any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Geisen. You do have questions. You're not off the hook quite yet, but I'll go to Councillor Deal first, the questions.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on the new position. We'll miss you here. I have a question around the movable equipment piece. It seems to me that, I mean, again, I know that most people are looking for space, the final frontier, but with people doing more job sharing and space sharing, is movable equipment something that might fit into a category of things that could be shared by multiple companies?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, and what the review did for us was reaffirm that there is no lessening in the interest in the question of equipment. I think that trying to look at this as a continuum, so the program was launched in 2009 and has done amazing work, and with the addition of the critical assistance grant and the changes in funding level for minor and major, it will move to the next level. I do think that it would be valuable to look at how do we fund an equipment category and what is the right funding level. The review was not of sufficient detail in that one area to give us guidance, and so perhaps a little bit further work to tease out what does that look like. Is it as you indicate, or you know, the requests we often get are for the kind of rigging, lighting, you know, that sort of stuff. So where does it need to focus, and how could we address that going forward?
Thanks. I'm thinking about shared equipment. My second question is actually more generic to grants, but there was no place to sort of ask that, so I'll ask it because it actually is directly relevant to this report. One of the real pluses of this recommendation is the year-round applications. I get questions all the time, and I'm sure all of our staff do, about which granting stream is the most appropriate one for something they have either an emerging issue or an ongoing issue, or they're new, or they think they should be in this category as opposed to that category. Do we have I go to the website frequently, and I point people there frequently. Would it be possible to put together perhaps a guide to people entering into granting at the city, community services and cultural services, saying, here are the types of grants we have, here are the deadlines, here are their applications, because we all spend a lot of time answering those questions. That's something perhaps for Ms. Llewellyn-Thomas.
I think it's a simple answer, just to say yes. I think it's a great idea to improve our communication and make their wayfinding easier. So we'll jump on that.
Okay,
right
thank
away.
you, especially as we add and adjust. And I've got to say that the grant program has been so facile and so capable of adjusting and shifting to changing needs. I really want to compliment the staff on that. And then before I sit down, I just want to acknowledge we've got some members of our Arts and Culture Policy Council here in the audience and thank them for their support today.
All right, Councillor Deal is next. Or sorry, Councillor Carr. Councillor Deal just spoke.
She did. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Ms. Geisen, for your incredible service to our city and the arts and culture organizations and livability, lifeblood of our city. My first question has to do with the fact that the $100,000 that is being suggested to go into critical assistance, you noted is going to come out of the budget. And then we've got another recommendation to increase the amount of money potentially per grantee in certain categories. Anyway, so will this diminish, the number of organizations potentially that can get funded?
When we began the capital plan, the 4-year capital plan, we had requested that the grant funding return to $1 million a year for 4 years, but purposefully underspent the first 2 years of that 4-year capital budget in anticipation of the review and these changes and the need for additional funds. So pending the outcomes of the 2017 and 2018 budget process, we hope that the funds that were underspent in the first 2 years will be allocated in the second 2 years, and that will cover that increase in the categories as well as the new critical assistance program.
We won't see a problem in the next 2 years, but then we'll have
That's
to
our
revisit
anticipation.
this in order to maintain sort of the breadth of funding for different organizations. Okay, that's good heads up. And I must just say I very much appreciate the fact that we are, the lead city in terms of funding per capita to arts and culture. I'm very proud of that. My second question has to do with this emergency grant and urgent life-saving, we say the words urgent life-saving situations. Can you describe what situations have occurred that led the review to identify this as a critical need?
Well, in terms of the urgent life safety, that's a direct outcome of our regulatory review work that Diana Leong in our office has led, and understanding organizations that are in spaces that, let me back up for one moment. I always say there's 3 issues. One of them is affordability, the second one is suitability, and the third one is tenure, security of the asset. So the suitability, we have many, many organizations and artists in spaces that are not entirely suitable for the work they're doing. As you know, they're in compromised spaces, and those are the spaces that are also being redeveloped. So the urgent life safety, in the working through those regulatory reviews, we have seen a number of situations where you can actually separate life safety issues into what has to happen immediately, required by the fire code in order to protect life, and what needs to happen over a period of time. And we've worked with our building folks and others in the city to lay out, for example, a plan of implementation. The Western Front is a great example where there were urgent life safety that needed to be undertaken immediately, and then working with the building folks, we were able to lay out a series of life safety regulatory requirements, but they could be implemented over a longer period of time.
And when I'm just trying to get a picture, especially for people who are interested in the public.
Right.
You know, when you say life safety, is it because like a furnace is blown up or
Well, certainly for the emergency, yeah, you see that. You see boilers, you know, if your boiler goes and you're in an older building, you need to replace that immediately, or you can't deliver your programs and services. For the life safety, it's panic bars, it's fire, it's wall separations, it's a whole variety of things along those categories. Some of them are even more serious, where it's exiting, and you have seen before you a couple of situations where spaces were in threat of being closed down unless some of these could be taken care of. Right. The emergency-like response, we have seen in the beginning of the program, I think we saw a little bit more of that, or we heard about it, but because the program wasn't ever able to respond due to the timing and needing to bring the recommendation to council, the knowledge of those has actually dropped off. So it's a bit of a pilot to see how the uptake will work out. But we do think it's very important for these organizations to have the ability to secure that kind of funding at a critical moment. For a nonprofit organization that doesn't have a whole lot of reserves, that can be a game changer. It also makes a difference in terms of, yes, sometimes you can let a failure go on for a period of time, but that will increasingly weaken the structure and create even further costs. You know it perhaps in your own homes. If you don't address the roof when it happens, you could have a much bigger issue. So we're trying to help organizations be proactive.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Carr. Councillor DiGenova?
Thank you very much. And also congratulations. I'll echo what the other councillors have said on your new position, and we're very sad to see you go here at the city. Thank you for all of the great work, this report and so many others. And Councillor Carr's asked a number of my questions. I'll just ask regarding the criteria that's now currently set out. Would we see any groups that currently do benefit from that funding be excluded now because of the new criteria? Would this impact any of our current grantees?
No, because if I understand your question correctly, the Cultural Infrastructure Grant Program criteria continues. So there's still the opportunity every year for organizations who are seeking funding for planning, minor capital, major capital, and now with these increased funding levels to come through that program. So I don't see any impact there. The critical assistance is really a new program that opens the door for year-round funding for organizations. So I don't see any organizations not being able to or detrimentally affected, if I've understood your question.
Thank you. Yes, you did. And a follow-up to that would be, do you feel that we may actually be able to help more organizations? And I'll just preface that question by saying I understand that there are a number of nonprofits that really do a couple of $1,000s up to an event space will make or break what they're able to do as a society, or if they're able to sustain themselves. So I understand that it's very competitive, although I too am proud that we're the highest in funding per capita in arts and culture. For these reasons, I also I want to make sure that I put any fears at ease of any of the organizations I've heard from. Okay, well, if the goalposts are changing, does this mean we might not be eligible? So I'm very happy to hear that.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor DiGenova. I've got Councillor Deal, and you need 8 votes. We do. Yeah. Okay, we can do that. Before we do that,
Okay.
I don't have questions. We'll just wait a sec. I just want to thank you, Ms. Geisen, for your body of work here at the city, and a decade of making a great contribution to the city. I know many in the arts community have benefited immensely from your support, and folks working with you at the city, you'll definitely be missed. But it sounds like you won't be far away working on social purpose real estate, which the community and the city have been, I think, working collaboratively to bring into play here in Vancouver in a much more significant way. And you bring all kinds of great relevant experience to help build the partnerships which are essential to social purpose real estate. So we're really thankful for your work here at the city over this past decade and programs like cultural infrastructure grants that you work so hard to create and share with other cities now around the world. And so big thanks on behalf of the city, and good luck to you. We'll look forward to working in partnership going forward.
If I might say,
Please.
I would just like to say two things. First of all, thank you, Council, and thank you, other staff members, because there's no way any one person can make a difference. It's a broad range of people in our office in cultural services who've made a difference for the space program. And I do look forward to returning to talk about social purpose real estate. So thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Councillor Deal?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to
Grand
move through
finale.
recommendations and make a few comments. First, to the grant itself. The infrastructure grants have been one of our most popular ones because it's one of the most flexible ones, and it really does address emerging and perhaps challenges that are not as tightly defined as they are in some of the other granting streams. So it's been a tremendous asset to us. I get a ton of positive feedback on that granting stream. And then to Ms. Geisen, you and I have been working together since the 2008 culture plan and facilities and grants, and we've worked closely on many, many projects together. I will truly miss working with you. And I have to tell you that if the public doesn't know this about Jackie, she not only deals with the policy piece extremely well, but I've had people in tears in my office because you found the space that they needed. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Councillor Deal. So we have a mover. We need a seconder for that. Councillor, there was a few. Okay. Councillor Carr, why don't you second, and then you can speak to the motion. You're on the queue.
Yes, I am. I'm happy to second. And just really because, as I said earlier, I think it's an incredibly important part of the city to support the arts and culture organizations within the city. I mean, it's the livability of the city, it's the heart and soul of a city. So I thank everybody on staff for the incredible work that you do in this regard. And I think many people say, well, it's certainly adding to the richness of the city culturally. It's adding to the economy. It's adding to the enjoyment, the pleasure of people, to their, as I say, their spiritual and emotional well-being. So I'm happy to have seen and heard the explanations for why we need to move into a new granting stream for urgent reasons. I think all of us in the city know that there are a number of institutions that are in buildings that are, well, they need upgrading, and it can be extremely precarious for them. So I think this is a good addition to the program, and for those reasons, and for the work. And thank you, Councillor Deal, too, for the work, and Councillor Ball, who's not here, for the work through our committee work and just in the community.
Thanks, Councillor Carr, and we're ready to go to a vote on the motion. Okay, all 8 votes in favor, unanimous support, so that carries. Thanks, Council. And once again, thank you very much, Ms. Geisen. Thanks for all your work here at the city, and congratulations. Okay, we're on to the next piece of our, in our report reference on arts and culture grants in Vancouver Civic Theatres, and the second, B, is cultural grants operating large-scale organization review and grant allocations. Are there any questions of staff on this one? Councillor Carr, did you have a question? Okay. Okay. That was well explained in the presentation. No questions. Councillor Deal will move, and Councillor Carr will second. Anyone want to speak to that? Okay, we're going right to the vote. Cut to the chase here. And we have 8 votes in favor, unanimous support on B. So we have approved that piece as well. Thanks to staff for all the work on that specifically, and all the work that was prepared for council to make a swift decision. Thank you. And we're on to C, which is the underutilized spaces at Vancouver Civic Theatres. And are there questions of staff on this? Councillor Deal.
Just a quick question. I think this is a really exciting and fun program, and you've gotten something, whether it's Zumba classes or which showed up on one of the CBC Twitter feeds as they were looking out their window. How you've managed to attract a really diverse kinds of groups coming into these underutilized spaces, which you've got to find a better term for these underutilized hidden secrets or hidden gems or something, something a little sexier than underutilized spaces. How is it that you're finding this great diversity of organizations and activities into these spaces? What's the outreach been like?
I think initially it was really the media that really got onto it. There was such an excitement in the community. So we started getting so many calls and requests through that. Yes, social media. So some of it was really targeted directly into diverse communities, and we saw the results.
Thank you. And on the QE Plaza itself, I know that the Christmas market has moved off, but we have other exciting things to program in its place?
Yes, Christmas market will also continues having portion, about a third of a plaza, something like the German wishing well, they call it. So it's a way for them to help activate now the Jackpot Plaza. So they are back, Christmas market is back, okay. And we are looking into other activations. We are currently working with an arts organization that's looking into partnering with us on creating a skating rink. So stay tuned, we're working on that.
We will stay tuned. I'd be happy to move the recommendation and offer my thanks.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Deal, seconded by Councillor Carr. Any discussion on the motion? We're going right to the vote on this one. And we have 8 votes in favor, unanimous support again for the underutilized spaces. Thanks for all the work into this one.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
To you and the team, and keep up the good work. We're on our...
We will. We have here members of our team, Krista Edwardson, Peter Candle, and Tara Lazemi. So.
Good stuff. Welcome all. Good work. Thank you. We're on to our 4th and final report, which is Vancouver Civic Theatre's rental rates for 2017 and 18. Council, no questions. We'll go right to a motion from Councillor Deal and seconded by Councillor Carr. Any speakers to the motion? Seeing none, we will go to the vote on Civic Theatre's rental rates for 2017 and 18, and unanimous support again for that final piece of the puzzle. So thanks for the good work done.
Thank you very much.
Good preparation, and thank you for being here at Council today. Keep up the good work out there at the Vancouver Civic Theatres. Okay, I neglected just before we got into report references to deal with the requests to speak on motions of notice, which we typically have been doing early in the agenda to signal to everyone involved about what will happen later in the meeting. So we'll come back to that now. I'll just vary the agenda to address that. I'll ask for a motion to vary the order of the agenda to consider requests to speak to motions on notice. Councillor Stevens will move, Jang will second. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. So we received requests to speak to motion B1. First of all, should council wish to hear the speaker's motion can be referred to tomorrow morning's City Committee on City Finance and Services. Councillor Carr, would you like to move B1 and the referral? Okay, and
I am moving B1, but I did submit to the clerk a slight amendment to that. So just recognizing that it is the motion that I submitted this morning to the clerk that I will be speaking to tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you. And I move referral.
And that is moved and referred. And Councillor DiGenova, you're happy to second the motion and the referral? Okay. And any discussion on referral? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. So that will come back tomorrow to hear from speakers. And we also have requests to speak to motion B2. And so should council wish to hear the speakers, motion can be referred to the committee meeting tomorrow as well, City Finance and Services. Councillor Meggs, would you like to move motion B2 and the referral? So moved. And a seconder for that? Councillor Stevenson by a nose there. And any discussion on the referral motion to tomorrow? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. So we have concluded, we've referred both of those motions on notice to tomorrow's committee meeting. Those will come back. And we will now consider the reports held for debate or questions to staff. And first and foremost, we have Communications 1, and that is Councillor DiGenova, you are up on Communications number 1, which is the Neighbourhood Liaison, the appointment of Neighbourhood Councillor Liaisons. Councillor DiGenova.
Yes, I did have some questions regarding this that had come to my attention both from going over the report and the liaisons, but as well as from the public, because I understand that this had been made public when the council package was. The question is regarding, my first question, I suppose, my concern is regarding the way that this is listed. It doesn't seem to be alphabetical. The first row and the second row, I would think that the councillors' names, if they were alphabetical. So I'm just wondering if there's some sort of first councillor and second councillor to each neighborhood, or each councillor's weighed equally for each neighborhood. And if so, why are they not alphabetical?
That is a good question. I don't think there's no, just as we had with liaisons to neighborhood plans in recent years, where there are 2 councillors to each neighborhood that's going through neighborhood planning process. Community plans, there are 2 councillors who are liaisons, and they both work concurrently as the liaisons. So this was a random assortment. Don't know why it's not alphabetical or anything else. And
there would be no reason that all of the vision councillors were in one row, the first row, yet all of the councillors from the other parties were in another row. So it is weighted equally for each councillor in each neighborhood.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Another question I had is regarding the distribution. So I see that 4 councillors have 5 liaison neighborhoods, and those 4 councillors also sit on the board of Metro Vancouver. 2 of those 4 councillors are acting and deputy mayor, and their workload, we have decided as a council, is more, and enough so that the pay was increased, or a position of pay was made for that position. And one of those councillors also sits on the P&E board. So I'm just wondering how the work was distributed and how it was calculated, or what metrics were used to calculate councillors and their ability to serve the neighborhoods, considering their other commitments.
I'll just say, in terms of the appointment process with this, I asked for input from councillors. I actually got no feedback as per the process that was laid out in the motion that council approved early this year. There was no feedback, so I basically had to put this together without any of your input on which neighborhoods you'd like to work in, how many you'd like to work in. And the distribution was really about making sure there's basically some of these neighborhoods have much larger populations than others, so there's a filter in terms of population to even out approximate workload as the populations are different, and the liaison work. We're anticipating anyway that as that concierge function and helping people to connect to city process and answer questions, that obviously there'll be more from some of the neighborhoods like downtown or West End where they are much more dense. So this was some of it was also trying to do some geographical in terms of where people are and adjacent neighborhoods, but it couldn't be accomplished across the board. So it's a starting place in terms of putting these together, and I would say in future it would be very helpful if councillors have preferences or desires that they participate in that process, and that would make my job easier in terms of confirming where the neighborhood liaisons are.
Another question I have is regarding, well, I mean, the workload. So I'm not quite sure how, with some councillors sitting as acting mayor, deputy mayor, and the five councillors that currently sit on Metro Vancouver, would we not consider some councillors who have less responsibilities or liaison positions and give them more neighborhoods? So that's my first question. The second question, and I'm just going to try and fit it all in here, is that I see right here that almost, at least informally from hearing us all speak about the neighborhoods that we live in, that all of us here have the neighborhoods that we live in, except for Councillor Affleck, who I understand lives downtown, and he was not given his neighborhood, and the two councillors who were do not live downtown. That's my understanding. So I'm just wondering if you tried to put people in their actual, the areas that they live, if you could perhaps elaborate on that, as well as the distribution of work.
Well, I think distribution of work, people have various duties throughout the city. Obviously, this council sits every other week, and there are various other duties. So I think that people have their workload, and they're compensated for workload if they have outside work and appointments such as Metro Vancouver or in my case, TransLink. So we manage our work accordingly, and there isn't, it was more between the number of neighborhoods and trying to keep it relatively even. So that's what was differentiating on that front. In terms of where people live, I think there are a number of different rationales in terms of putting people where they were, and again, because there was no input, Councillor Affleck did not contact me or put anything together as requested in the motion, where councillors were to rank a minimum of 10 neighborhoods, so I would have a sense of where they wanted to work, and so I had to base this without that. So did not have his input on that front, but that would be helpful in future as this process hopefully will come up again. If it's successful and citizens feel like they have a much better connection to City Hall through liaison councillors, then there will be opportunities in future to change it up. Okay, Councillor Carr is next.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do find it interesting that no councillor provided you with a response to the request to list the top priority neighborhoods. I can't speak for anyone else but myself, but I can tell you the reason I didn't supply you with a list is because I am firmly in the belief that as elected at large, I serve the whole city, and it's impossible for me to say to you which neighborhoods would be my priority neighborhoods, because they're all my priority neighborhoods. So this is a very, I think, very challenging and difficult task to ask of a councillor elected at large in this city. I do have several questions. My first question is, how will this information get communicated by the city to the public at large or to whomever?
We've just lost quorum. We will, oh, there we go. We're back again. So the process of communicating this, at this point, that hasn't been established. What we're doing today is the appointment process and clarifying who the councillor liaisons are by neighborhood. The next steps around exactly how this will integrate with the city's functions and how the communications will be done. That's a next step of work that staff will certainly be working with us on.
Yeah, may I just make it clear at this point in time, I think it's incredibly important that it's the communication ensures people that they have the ability to contact whichever councillor they choose to want to contact, whether it's a liaison councillor or not, because as I say, we are elected at large. It is their privilege and right to contact any one of us. And that in any communications, whether they be posted on our website or in any other form, that it's clear that that is reiterated. They can contact whomever they wish to on council, and that if they don't know who to contact, here are some liaisons that they may wish to turn to. I feel, as I say, very strongly about the way in which this is communicated. I just also want to state that, I'll leave it. Those are my questions. I'll speak to the motion when the motion is put forward. Thank you.
Okay. So the just to clarify, the Appendix B that was in the motion that the council approved early in the year, that was about expectations for neighborhood councillor liaisons, was very clear about that point that you just raised, that councillors, we anticipate, it's anticipated that as councillors are listed for each neighborhood as the liaison, that residents remain free to contact any member of council. So that's been laid out in the expectations that we approved many months ago, and it's also laid out that councillor liaison is not intended to be the conduit for information to or from the city. It's expected as well that organizations in the neighborhood continue, like BAs and that, continue to connect with staff as they have been doing. So there are the two appendices in the motion that was passed lay out very clearly the process and the expectations. But today is just about the appointments themselves. So, Councillor Meggs, next up.
Well, just reflecting on some of the comments, Mr. Mayor, and I don't want to be argumentative, but I did not give any feedback because I was comfortable with whatever assessment or assignment you made. And so I don't think that too much can be read into that either way. I do support this process, however, so I wasn't withholding feedback as a protest against the appointment of the liaisons. I do think that we should keep in mind on the workload front that really it's just whether or not you can use your new constituency or your discretionary funds to support that outreach. I think is an important thing to keep in mind. So all councillors on an equal basis have now, as a result of the changes established recently, access to resources to communicate in a nonpartisan way with people who are approaching them, whether they approach them as liaison or not. But that should be of some assistance, and it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. And I also think it'll be kind of incumbent on those of us who are paired to advise the other person who may have some responsibility for that neighborhood that they're following up some issue, because currently no one follows up with, we just be honest with each other, under the current arrangement where it's 10, all prioritizing 10, no one has any idea if anyone is following up, and the reality is most of the time no one is following up. So this is an attempt to improve feedback for people in the particular neighborhood. Say, okay, I know where I can start on the system, and I'll go from there, and maybe it'll very quickly go to staff, maybe it'll be resolved, who knows, but this is an attempt to help voters get further down the road with their concerns, and there are resources now allocated as a result of the changes a few months ago to support that work.
Thanks, Councillor Meggs. Councillor Reimer?
Mayor Robinson, I wanted to move the recommendations.
Okay, that is very helpful in terms of setting us off in a direction.
I did have some comments.
A seconder for the motion, Councillor Jang. So speaking to the motion, Councillor Reimer?
Thank you, Mayor Robertson. I did take some time this weekend to send this report or communications item to the members of the Engaged City Task Force. As just to rewind through some history here, as you might remember, Council appointed a group of 21 residents who are experts in engagement, what is referred to as engagement practitioners in the city, to give us recommendations on how to better engage residents. Those residents did a number of consultations with residents through a variety of mechanisms. This particular recommendation was one that they felt before coming to council was a, quote, no-brainer, so obvious. Every consultation we did, this came up as the number one issue that residents raised, and businesses and nonprofits actually, as the most challenging issue for them was figuring out who to contact, or they had emailed and not heard back from anyone. So imagine their surprise when it came to council, and this was by far the most controversial item on the list of recommendations, which is why I took the time to contact them to let them know it was finally moving to its next logical step. I would say the questions from at least one councillor today who had previously stated they would boycott the process, now concerned that they're not getting enough neighborhoods, gives me some hope that we will be able to move forward to the point where this is normative. We do, all of us, have liaisons already, quite a number of them. We ask the mayor for appointments to different committees, demographic committees, whether they're persons with disabilities or senior or food or LGBTQ or other ones. And at council, when we express our, I've heard many times councillors say, I'm the liaison to whatever. They never once have I gotten the sense that that councillor would feel that they don't also represent seniors or children and youth or Aboriginal people or people who care about food or bikes or other things. It's just a way of ensuring that council has a direct link who can focus some time on digging more deeply into a neighborhood while ensuring that representation is there for people who want it. As pointed out by Councillor Carr, some people are quite adept at contacting council and will continue to be so regardless of where they live and who their neighborhood liaison is. For those that aren't, and that number's in the many, many, many of thousands, this is an opportunity to connect more. And I'm hoping that as time goes by, it's as normed as being a liaison to persons with disabilities or another committee. The VSB and the Park Board have had this for many decades now, and we don't bat an eyelash about that. And in fact, people who need to contact them are happy that that liaison system exists. So I do hope that as we move forward, we're able to norm the system so that it just becomes part of the liaison functions that we do at council. I am proud to be appointed as a liaison to these neighborhoods, but I'm also proud to be elected at large and continue to support that system.
Thanks, Councillor Reimer. Councillor Stevenson to the motion.
Yes, thanks very much. Mr. Mayor, I also am in support of this and never spoke to you about it either until this has been raised today for the same reasons as Councillor Meggs, that I thought it was better for you to decide and be able to balance what were the best appointments. I do have a concern though. Some of these are very dense neighborhoods and so on. And we have two councillors, and some of the councillors very clearly indicated when this was passed they were going to boycott. They wouldn't have anything to do with this. So it means that some of these areas will only have one councillor as a liaison, which will be either double the work or that those areas won't be covered nearly as adequately. So I suppose how do we let how will we deal with that in the future when councillors are boycotting and now you only have one councillor that's able to look after? Will we look at redistributing or putting a councillor from another area to help cover off? Or, because some of these are very dense areas and there's a lot of people who could be in contact with a councillor, and that councillor is dealing with a situation where the other councillor just simply won't have anything to do with it. And I think that's going to be a problem for us going forward, and one we will need to deal with either fairly quickly, as councillors make it known to both us and the public they are not going to be a liaison or down the future.
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. And Councillor DiGenova.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm still trying to understand how exactly this list was distributed. I would have expected that there may have been some metrics involved. And that being said, I'm going to also take this opportunity to make it very clear that although I do believe I could have called a point of order, words were put in my mouth because I certainly did not say that in boycotting the process, I would not be serving all of the citizens of Vancouver. So if I am serving all of the citizens of Vancouver, I not only will be serving the 4 neighborhoods, Arbutus Ridge, Hastings Sunrise, Kitsilano, and Kerrisdale that I have been assigned, but I'll be serving all of Vancouver. And I often find that I will get emails or phone calls from individuals who have tried reaching out to several councillors from another party, perhaps that has a majority on council, and they have not heard back. So I feel that there...
Councillor Meggs, point of
Those
order.
are actions of other members, so I would just ask her to refrain from that.
Sorry, what was the point of order?
Section 5.2 F. So she's expressing an allegation that reflects upon the character of any person or group that a majority has been somehow refraining from answering calls of constituents.
Councillor DiGenova, I'll just ask that you not breach the procedure bylaw on that front.
Thank you. If you could please reset my time, I had 23 seconds more. So I will be serving all of those neighborhoods. That being said, I'm quite surprised that during the original motion that came forward that sort of became a mini ward system here in the city, I was encouraged by another councillor, actually, and I'm sure I'll be called on a point of order, but Councillor Reimer encouraged me to send in my list of the neighborhoods that I was passionate about working with. So I'm very surprised to hear that no councillor has sent in a list of the neighborhoods that they wanted to work in. If they agreed with this process so much, they should be passionate about certain neighborhoods. So for that reason, I feel that each of us were asked to. I certainly didn't, because I agree with what Councillor Carr said. I serve all of Vancouver equally. That being said, I also just don't see the distribution of work. I understand that people are compensated for their time at Metro Vancouver, but the hours they spend there are less hours that they will be in that neighborhood. Downtown is one of the most densely populated areas, and our acting mayor is the liaison there, and he's often away on business or has other duties, as well as Metro Vancouver and the P&E board. So I'm trying to understand how some of these neighborhoods may actually be underserved. So I will be out there letting all of the citizens of Vancouver know that I stand for all of them. And unless there's a review of the electoral system that tells me otherwise, I will be representing all of the communities and neighborhoods that I was elected to. So I won't be able to support this. That being said, perhaps if this had been done in the order of votes, for each neighborhood, maybe even that would make sense. But looking at the data and looking at this over the weekend, I see that that's also not clear. Also, I do see that there are councillors, all from one political party, listed first. It's not alphabetized. It doesn't seem to be something here that we usually do, which really does concern me also, because it really does say to citizens who reached out to me that actually all of one party is listed first. It's not alphabetical, and there certainly was a lack of communication to the citizens of Vancouver that this would be equally weighed. So for those reasons, I won't be supporting this. I certainly will be serving every community, and I'll just say that so Councillor Stevenson can rest assured. He may not have been speaking specifically about me, but I certainly will be serving not only the 4 neighborhoods I've been giving, but the neighborhoods that you were given as well, and the neighborhoods that every councillor was given, as I hope you all will, as we were elected by all of the citizens of Vancouver. So for those reasons, I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I found it very interesting to hear Councillor Reimer's explanation in moving this motion of why this has come forward. And I actually will not, I I think it's probably pretty reasonable to expect that the top priority issue that may have been identified through public outreach was certainly people's concern around communications with City Hall, finding out the information they need, making sure there's action on an issue. I don't doubt that that was the #1 issue, but I do doubt that this particular remedy or suggestion was identified by citizens as the answer to the problem, because I don't think that's the case. And the reason I don't think that's the case is because I've had many people talk to me.
Point of order, Councillor Reimer.
Mayor Robertson, under 5.2.e, suggesting that I have misrepresented something to council would be inappropriate. I gave the information to the best of my knowledge and my participation in the process. Councillor Carr may have had a different experience, but that doesn't negate the one that I had or suggest that I am lying about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Reasonable point of order.
Thank you. To reiterate, I feel people have contacted me to say that they have seen the concern around dealing with City Hall, but they didn't want neighborhood liaisons in the form of councillors. What they wanted were staff, planning staff in particular, to be out in the neighborhoods, as we once had within Vancouver with local planning offices. And in fact, I know that the Coalition of Vancouver Neighbourhoods did approach you, and certainly City Hall, about going that route rather than a councillor neighbourhood liaison route. I'm very concerned that I've also heard comments that people feel that there may be some, oh, by the way, is that my time? I don't.
You started at 4 minutes. I didn't reset. So.
Oh, okay, thank you. They're concerned that once there have been councillor liaisons identified, and if they choose to go to someone else, that there might be some sort of retribution if they don't go to the councillors listed. Some concern that their idea will be, or their concern or request will receive less priority if they don't go to the specific liaison. I would like some assurance that that will be very clearly addressed in the communications, that it's, that this is not a suggestion to people that they must go this route. It is only a backup if they don't know what to do. I would like to also say that that I did. Well, I'm not going to support the motion. I'm not going to support the motion because, as I stated earlier on, I think this is not the right solution or remedy to the problem. And I think that it flies in the face of an electoral system where we are elected at large. That will not, though, in any way impede my follow-through in my duty to be a liaison as specified in this particular report and assignment of neighborhoods. I earlier, when this was discussed at council, made it clear I would boycott the process of identifying which neighborhoods were my priorities, because I do not believe that is a reasonable thing to ask of a councillor elected at large. So I didn't put in my priority list as requested, but I will absolutely do my duty in serving the neighborhoods as have been identified, and in continuing to serve all of the residents, all of the businesses from whichever neighborhood that choose to contact me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jang is next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It's quite interesting listening to all this hyperbole going on. You know, as a city councillor, I get calls from all different neighborhoods all the time, and I do what I always do. Like my colleagues here, we send it off to staff to get some information, the city manager to engineering, not just planning, but engineering, streets, electrical. I'd spend a lot of time back alleys counting lights that are missing, and sometimes I get a call from Southlands. Had one from Southlands the other day. It doesn't matter to me where it's from. I didn't put a list in either to the mayor simply because, well, I'm passionate about all neighborhoods, so no big deal there. I think the worries about this are unfounded. I think, people will contact. I often get calls from, say, Renfrew, Collingwood, because I live there. People know me. They see me walking down Kingsway. They see me at the superstore. They see me at T&T or wherever the case may be, and they just call you right away because they know you. Then I just send it off to staff. This is only one method. I mean, I think the issue we're trying to deal with here, so you have to remember, is that it's about people wanting access to City Hall, being able to get better access to City Hall. So we have the 311 system. Now we get from all of us a whole summary of calls that anybody can answer, right? We have people informally calling back and forth, all different councillors. Sometimes they call all of us, sometimes they just call one. Sometimes they don't even know where to start. So it's no big deal. I mean, actually, this is just another way of many. That's not precluding anything. That's not precluding anything. So people can still do what they do. I will still answer every call I get. I know Councillor Louis, for example, he's the type of guy who answers every single email. And he CCs people on it if he thinks it's, if you know the person or whatever. And we'll be doing the same thing with my partner, with Councillor Reimer, Councillor Louis, Councillor Affleck, and May. I'll be CCing on stuff like that all the time. It's what we do anyways. But now people just have another way they recognize a name to call. That's all it is. You can still call anybody you want. We still get the 311 summaries. The Engaged City Task Force is very clear about having somebody that people use as a focal point and how they were selected. Well, I'm glad I got some of these because I kind of live and hang out in these neighborhoods. I don't hang out in Arbutus Ridge very much. So, I don't know how much use I'd be to those folks, But, Kensington, Cedar Cottage, Renfrew, Collingwood, Sunset, Victoria, Fraserview, and East Vancouver, where I live and hang out. That's great. I lucked out in this one. But Councillor Affleck, he lives in Yaletown. I'll certainly CC him on that. Councillor Reimer doesn't live in all these neighborhoods, neither does Councillor Meigs. He lives in Fairview. It's not going to make a big difference to me. So I think the fears are unfounded. And really, what some of the comments I've heard in this debate so far really are just about, forget the fact that it's just giving citizens yet one more way of making sure they can get the voice of City Hall. So it's not just planning, but engineering, electrical, and everything else, and streets. So I'm happy to support this. I think it's going to enhance the job. I'm glad that folks have someone they can call. There's a couple of people they can call. And on whether or not it's alphabetical or not, I think that's the neighborhoods are alphabetical. So you can just kind of sort it that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jang. And back to Councillor Reimer.
Okay, well, I will use my closing to deal with allegations and aspersions, starting with the question of reasonableness, which was raised by Councillor Carr. What would be unreasonable is to have a process where people could put in preferences and then have them not put in preferences and get to this point and have them complain that they didn't get as much as they wanted or what they wanted when they never expressed what they wanted, which was the point of having a process available. But you don't have to use it, not unlike your neighborhood councillor liaison. If you already have a councillor you want to talk to or think you might want to talk to, great. But if you don't, this is an opportunity for you to find that avenue in. In regards to the allegation that this wasn't the result of the consultation of the Engaged City Task Force, I will remind Councillor Carr, there are 21 residents who took part in that task force with specific expertise in engagement that came from broad demographics. The youngest person on that task force was considerably younger than the younger person on this council, and the oldest person was also older than the oldest person on this council. They had broad ethnic backgrounds, broad lived experience backgrounds. They did consultations ranging in both scope and geographic and demographic distribution across the city. And they, in their report, if you've read it, say directly that this is the #1 issue. They also spoke, and I remember you asking them questions about it at council. So to say that that wasn't the outcome is not appropriate. That you aren't talking to the same people and thus aren't getting the same answer is fine. But to suggest that somehow the conclusion that they came to as a result of their consultation is at best disrespectful to the work that they have done. On the issue of whether or not people can talk to other councillors, I would say ask a school trustee. Unfortunately, you can't ask a sitting trustee anymore. But there are 2 former park board commissioners sitting at this table. Both of them were liaisons to geographic areas. Neither of them, I would imagine, although now I am speculating, but it would surprise me a great deal if they felt that their experience as a park board commissioner who was elected at large was negated as a result of them being a liaison to a geographic area. You're concerned that that would surprise me?
DeGenova.
I'll pull up this section here, just a moment. Or I could just tell you that I feel that words are being put in my mouth, or that opinions are being. I'm finding it here. I mean, usually. Yeah, pretty much.
She could be upset.
I'm fine. There's so many here, really. I would say that probably under F, because it really does directly or indirectly reflect upon my feelings and how I feel as a person and as a former park board commissioner. So I would like to ask you, Mr. Mayor, to ask councillors to perhaps speak to their own experience and not to assume what other councillors may or may not feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeGenova. Councillor Reimer, please.
So I can speak for myself as a former school trustee that in my role as a liaison to specific geographic areas, I never once felt that my role as a school trustee elected at large was diminished, and in fact spoke to people from across the city when they chose to contact me. But for those parents or people living in surrounding neighborhoods who needed some point of access, they were quite happy to have had one. And I never once had anyone complain that this somehow made me less of a school trustee elected at large. This is plain and simple about accountability to the residents who elect us. If you don't want that, vote against it. If you do, vote for it. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, speaking of which, we will go to the vote on the motion as moved by Councillor Reimer on appointment of neighborhood councillor liaisons. And we have 6 votes in favor, 2 in opposition. That's Carr and DeGenova opposed. The motion carries with 6 votes, and we have concluded that item. And we are on to the next of the reports that was held for debate or separate vote. That is policy report number 1. Councillor Carr, you had asked for CD1 rezoning 454 West Pender Street.
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have several questions on this report. My first question is around the Victory Square guidelines, which are referenced in the report. And the Victory Square guidelines note that in no case shall maximum heights be greater than 100 feet. And so that seems to contradict the report itself and other recommendations. I'm wondering if you could just explain that or make sure that it is explained at the time of the public hearing.
Yes, I'm Linda Gillen, rezoning planner with the Downtown Division of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability. The Downtown East Side Plan also applies in this instance, and so the council adopted policy in the plan allows consideration of rezoning with a height of up to 105 feet for sites where there is secured market rental housing, as all of the proposed residential, which is the case in this instance. So that's the enabling policy which allows staff to consider the rezoning application, and we can certainly bring some additional detail on that to the public hearing.
Yeah, I think what would be important for the public is understanding which report trumps which. And why. My second question has to do with the fact that in this report, page 7, refers to a companion site and how there is basically an application of a policy to achieve so much family housing by combining the 2 sites. I don't know what the authority is for that, or how it is that we as councillors can consider this notion of companion sites. I think that I would like more explanation of that.
And I can certainly bring some more information on that to the public hearing.
Great. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Carr, are you
I will move referral.
willing to move referral? Okay, and a seconder for that? Councillor Meggs, any discussion? Madam Clerk, do we need to vote on this? No? Okay. So we'll just do a show of hands. All those in favor of referral, policy report number 1. Any opposed? And that carries. That is referred to public hearing, and we go on to the other report that was held for questions, and that is number 2, CD1 rezoning for 424 to 428 West Pender Street. And Councillor Carr again.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I do have the same question that I'd like to make sure is clarified, which is the notion of companion sites, because this is the site that has less of the family housing. So it's just a repeat of the question.
And we will certainly bring more information on that.
Great, thank you. I have another question, and again, on page 7 of the report, it talks about the difficulty of achieving the family housing, quote, due to the constraints of a mid-block site. I'm unclear as to what that really means and what the constraints of a mid-block site, why that has relevance to the inability to achieve the family.
That would be a question that relates more to the urban design and form of development.
Right.
And so we will have a development planner available at public hearing and be able to bring some more information.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm willing to move that recommendation.
Okay.
For referral.
Moving to Councillor Carr moves referral, and seconder for that? Second. Councillor Jang. Any discussion? All those in favor of referral, policy report number 2. Any opposed? And that carries. So both of those have been referred to public hearing. And we're on to bylaws. We have 8 bylaws on the agenda for consideration by council. Bylaw 6 has been withdrawn. Councillor DeGenova has declared a conflict of interest on bylaws 1 to 5. So we'll separate the vote on those bylaws. Okay. Councillor, so bylaws 3, 7, and 8 are public hearing and enactment bylaws. Council members who were absent from the respective hearings may only vote if they now confirm they've reviewed the missing portions of the meetings, which includes viewing the related video clip. Councillor Carr, you were absent from the public hearing related to bylaw number 6. Have you reviewed the proceedings, and will you be voting on the enactment?
Yes, I have indicated to the clerk that I have read the reports, I have viewed the proceedings, and will be voting.
Thank you. And Councillor Jang, you were absent for the public hearings related to bylaws 6 and 8. Have you reviewed the proceedings, and will you be voting on the?
Yes, I have reviewed the proceedings of everything, and will be voting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stevenson and I were absent from the public hearing related to bylaw 7. Councillor Stevenson, have you reviewed the proceedings, and will you be voting on the enactment?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes, and I will not be voting on bylaw number 7. So we will vote first on bylaws 1 to 5, for which Councillor DeGenova has declared a conflict of interest, and she's going to remain. She needs to leave the chamber. Okay. So would someone like to move adoption of bylaws 1 to 5? Councillor Jang is seconder. Councillor Deal. Any discussion on 1 through 5? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. And that means we're on to voting on bylaws 7 to 9. We'll just get Councillor DeGenova back in here. Would someone like to move adoption of bylaw 7 to 9? Councillor Jang, Councillor Deal seconds. Any discussion on bylaw 7 to 9? And all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously, and the list of the approved bylaws can be viewed on the city's website. So we have referred the motions on notice to tomorrow's committee meeting, so we'll be hearing from speakers on those, which means we're on to notice of motion, new business, and inquiries and other matters. Councillor Deal, first up.
Yes, thanks very much. I just wanted to confirm something that came out in a press release a couple of days ago. We're very proud that the Vancouver Food Strategy won an international award. It won the first ever Milan Pact Award for Governance or Ensuring an Enabling Environment for Effective Action. as part of the Milan Food Policy Pact that we signed onto last year, along with 127 other cities. And this is a brand new award category, and we're very pleased that we took it home. The food strategy was produced after a couple of years of very hard work, including an enormous amount of input from the Food Policy Council, and was implemented in 2013. I've just had an update on where we are with it. A lot of the items are being completed or underway, and it's provided a lot of very specific and very effective direction in terms of our policies around the city, around food security, food production, and as well as things like community gardens and food availability in every neighborhood. So it's been a very powerful policy. We're very proud of it, and I wanted to thank everybody at the Food Policy Council and on staff who helped with this. I don't have an award to hold up. If one arrives in the mail, I'll be sure to bring it.
Thanks, Councillor Deal, and a big congrats on to all our foodies here at the city. Councillor Reimer's next.
Yeah, I just had a brief thing to note that I am one of the participants in the 5th Annual Welfare Food Challenge, along with 2 other members of the city, Molly Henry, who's a staff person in the Mayor's office, and Mary Claire Zach, who's a social policy folk, as you all know. And I bring it up in part so that you're kind to her tomorrow when she's at council. I rise to speak to it because, well, a few things. The point of the challenge is to give a voice to the 175,000 plus people in the province who will, sorry, I'm a little low blood sugar myself, who do this every day. Like their week will not end at the end of this week. For those that don't know, the welfare shelter rate is $375. I'm guessing we all know that and can recite it in our sleep. The average rent for an SRO room in the city of Vancouver now is $479, and those are for people who live in cities that have SROs. Many cities in the province don't have anything available even that low. So the $610 you get, whatever you have to put into housing, whatever's left is for food, and the Welfare Food Challenge, at least for Vancouver, leaves us about $18 a week to participate. I have to tell you, I am quite ambivalent about participating, not just for the impact on health and low blood sugar, but because I do, having lived in these circumstances myself, sort of have the feeling that it's a kind of, I sort of put it broadly in the category of poverty tourism, where you're sort of doing a little, I don't know, temporary poverty or something. I will tell you that my decision to participate this year was based on the fact that there's a provincial election and a feeling that times are so desperate that after 10 years of not seeing an increase, something needed to be done. You can tell it's getting close to lunchtime. So I do hope you'll take a minute to get to the welfarefoodchallenge.org website. If you haven't signed the petition, to sign the petition, but more importantly, to spread it out to your networks so that this can become an issue that is paid attention to in the upcoming election campaign.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reimer, and the others who are part of this on the city side, the Welfare Challenge. Thanks for your courage and fortitude to take that on. And no doubt it's a horrible struggle for many people here in the city and across the province right now to have enough food to eat. Councillor Jang is next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to arise and give my thanks to both Easy Park Corporation and the City of Vancouver engineers for getting the clock tower on top of the Chinatown Parkade working again. After decades, that clock has not been working. It's bad luck, of course, for members of the Chinese community to have a clock that's not working. And it is now up and running, and it was such a big event, it made all the major Chinese papers. And Easy Park has also moved to install some electric charging vehicle stations in that parkade, as well as change it all to LED lighting, so we're saving a lot of energy. And proud to say that Easy Park as well, I've been sitting on the board now for a number of years, has also won some major awards internationally for sustainability in parking. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jang. Congrats. Thanks for your work on the Easy Park board. Councillor Carr is next.
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First, I would just like to let people know that starting on Thursday, we have the Writers' Festival coming to Vancouver, and my daughter is participating. And I know that many of the events are sold out online, so just to let people know that my understanding from my daughter is that there are tickets often at each event that are the last minute tickets, and they still are available. So you can go to an event if you see one that you like, and there may be seats or tickets available that are last minute tickets. So I encourage people to go to that. It is usually a sold out event in every single one of the cases, and it's a wonderful festival, and I do encourage people to go. The second is that Thursday, October 20th at 10:20 is the BC Shakeout, the earthquake drill that will be happening here at City Hall, but throughout our city and throughout our province. And I really want to do two things. I want to acknowledge that there has been, through especially CBC radio and their podcasts on fault lines, a much greater emphasis on understanding the ramifications of an earthquake and what we should do about it. It's been an amazing series that they've been posting, and I think raised a lot of awareness. And I noticed, or I note that from one of the podcasts, that many people, in fact, they say the vast majority of people do not have a plan for their family. They don't have a plan. They don't have a kits pulled together. And I'm really encouraging people in our city to do that, to create a plan with your family and your friends in the event of an earthquake or disaster, and to pull a kit together. Especially, they're saying now it's not just a few days, 48 hours worth of medication. You should really be thinking about 1 to 2 weeks, for example, of critical medications that you might need, and water for sure. So have a supply of that, and have it in a place that you can easily access and quickly access. So I think it's you know, as everybody says over and over, it's not a matter of if, it's when, and we're already beyond the kind of expected range of dates when a large earthquake will hit our coast. So I'm looking forward to people kind of getting down and doing this, making a commitment for the safety of themselves and their families to do this preparation.
Okay, good points. Thank you very much, Councillor Carr. No further speakers with new business or other matters, so we need a motion to adjourn this council meeting. Councillor Stevenson moved, seconded by Councillor Jang. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. This council meeting is adjourned, and council will meet in camera at noon. Okay, 10 minutes. Thanks, everyone.